Thank you very much, Carrie. And we really get started with the features and benefits of the exciting new Team Developer 7.3 release. Here we go. This is my agenda slide. So there are 4 things we're going to talk about and we are going to show you today. So responsive layout is one of the big themes in Team Developer 7.3. Basically enables you to resize the contents and the amounts of data you see in a window with a feature called control anchoring. You get some grid and table enhancements. I'm going to talk about code profiling, the things that we have improved there, the grid tree view for easy analyzation, and the API output options that developers have, which enhance code profiling quite a bit. The SAL mail API, I'm going to talk about that as well. It stands a bit out from the other API updates that we're doing because it offers modern encryption and OAuth support, for example, Gmail. And then we have a lot of APIs and things that have changed in the IDE that we added to make life for a developer easier. And when I'm done with my overview presentation, I will hand over to Helmut and he will show you most of these features in live demos. So let's talk about the responsive layout and other UX features. You can now resize a window and have the window content adjust to the new size of the window. So basically, you have a window like this on your screen, and if you increase that with your mouse, then you can see more information now if you like. So increase the size of a window, more content can be made visible. If you decrease the size of a window, child objects get resized to make good use of available space. And we give you the tools to control all that. For that, we have control anchoring property settings. In the window containers, you can enable or disable anchoring for that window. And you can define a minimum size and a minimum size for width and height, so that a window cannot be reduced in its size smaller than it would make sense. Controls do have new properties for the vertical anchor. The vertical anchor can be the top, so the control remains anchored to the top. Bottom, the control will remain anchored to the bottom. And both the control will resize vertically to allow for more or less content to show. And likewise, we have that for the horizontal anchor. You can set the horizontal anchor to left, to right, and to both. And again, in the setting both, the control will resize horizontally. And here are screenshots of those settings in the IDE. And Helmut will go into detail showing applications that use these control anchoring features. So stay tuned for the product demo on this responsive layout feature. Grid table column header click. This is something that developers have asked us to implement. As you can see in the code on the right side, on SAM column header click. You can add that message to every column of a grid or table window and then put your code in there. Then I just wanted to mention this. That's something that has been added during the past few years to several team developer releases and helps you to support UHT displays with an increase in font size. So what I did show you before was the responsive layout that increases the amount of available data that is shown, for example, in a grid window. But if you want to increase the font size of an entire window, then we really depend on window scale and layout settings. And that is, if you look into Microsoft Outlook, that's exactly how Team Developer works. So if you want for Outlook, if you want to have the font display larger, then you would need to change the scale and layout settings in the window setting, and the same is true for Team Developer. And now in Team Developer, this is all automatic. We fully support that with these versions, beginning with these versions, TD 706, 7.1 and later. And One thing you need to take into consideration is that you should be using true type fonts throughout your application, because these true type fonts scale very nicely and you don't see any rasterized font images. So that's something that you could have experienced before when you don't change, if you haven't changed your control font settings to a true type font. Now, in these screenshots here on the right side, you see that the left shows a non-true type font and you get that rasterized look. So if you get that in team developer applications, then you should update to a true type font. Here you see font name MS reference sans serif, which is true type, and this one is not true type. So older team developer versions did not use a non-true type system font, and this will create scaling issues on UHD displays. So if you ported your applications from older versions, you likely have a non-true type font setting, because team developer used to have a non-true type font as the default font. Change your applications to use true type fonts, and then the size scaling with the Windows scaling should work seamlessly. And since TDE 7.2, 7.1, if you create new applications, then we are using a true type font in team developer itself, so you don't have scaling issues like this Ricky screenshot above there. And there's another hint that you can try, which we have from one of our customers. You can actually right-click on one of the team developer exe files, select the compatibility tab, press change, high DPI settings, here this one, and then select this one, override high DPI scaling behavior. And if you do that, then customers have seen that the scaling issues of fonts might go away. But the best option, of course, is to switch to true type fonts on your Windows entirely. Okay, so let's talk about the code profiling features in Team Developer 7.3. We introduced code profiling in Team Developer 7.2, and we have enhanced it quite a bit in this new version here. With that new version, it is easier to analyze code, and you will see the profiling results in a new user interface. We have new APIs that allow you to analyze the profile better. So basically, you can put in your own data points in that profile file and customize that. So the new profiling viewer is a tabbed grid view. You have a details tab and a summary tab. So you can switch between those two. And each of those, you can sort the columns by execution time, hit count. You can put or define per column filters, like in that screenshot that you see here. So you set a filter on the action column, for example. And here you also see the next feature, which I better describe on the next slide, actually. Code profiling API. So what you see here is in this profile, the first line here is in orange, and that's an annotation. So we have an API to allow you to put in annotations into the tracelog file. And the other thing are annotations, or the complementary thing are tags. Tags have a start and an end point, and that those allow you to profile entire code blocks that you define. So you see here tag 01 start, starting to load data into grid, tag 01 and load data into grid. And you also see that there is a combined time at the end for that entire execution time of this tag start to end, which is really nice. Now look at the methods and functions that we have provided here. One is really the first annotate, and you just provide a string, which is the annotation, and that goes into the profile file. With the tags, you have a start and an end point, and you can the time is added up between the start and end point. And you have a text again that is being displayed here in the action section, and that text can be different for the begin and the end tag. So you have start profile tag enter, and SAL profile tag leave. So that enhances a lot how you can analyze your source code. So you can basically break it down into the chunks that you need to look at and not at the module or the times that we provide. Let's have a look at the SAL mail API in Team Developer 7.3. So there's an update of the underlying mail API, which was required, for example, to support the new TLS 1.2 encryption, or which nowadays is better to use for connections to email servers. You also added OAuth support, so you can, for example, use Gmail. You can use Gmail. You could use Gmail before without OAuth, but if you use these advanced authentication methods, then you can make sure that it works in all instances, because if a Gmail user has set his email account to high security, then you will only be able to connect using OAuth, for example. And there's basically two functions. There are two functions that you need to call. You need to set a plugin, which we have provided. So this call SAL mail object.set plugin is the path to that OAuth sample in there. And then SAL mail object.set client secrets, which gives the system the client ID and the client secret. And you can obtain these from the Google Developer Console, which basically you need to register with Google and obtain the access codes for your Gmail account. Let's talk about the other API updates and IDE features in Team Developer 7.3. So in the IDE, there is more automatic online help or active coding assistant help with tooltips available now. First, for overloaded functions, you see that here on the right side, there are several show text functions with string parameter, with a number parameter, with a window handle parameter, and you see that you can choose from all these, and you get the help for all these. When you open the text outline from older TD versions, you will be prompted for a conversion, and you can tick that off with a registry setting. And we've cleaned up a bit the tools menu in the IDE. All the debug options now are combined in a sub-menu here. So let's look at the new APIs. You can write to the debug console with just one call now. You just call SAL trace debug. You have several events there, like for informations, warnings, and errors. And you just set the level and then provide the message that you want to post there. And you can also say, I want to clear all existing entries. So a simple way that can help to debug your applications. And this one has been requested because of GDPR requirements, which basically say that you cannot save passwords, even not encrypted passwords, anywhere. So that requires you to create a hash value of a password and save that hash value. So this password cannot be stored anywhere and cannot be unencrypted using any technology. So we have a new function for that, SAL string hash, and you can provide the hash level that you want to use. Hash 256 is what OpenText, for example, uses. You download product versions from my support, and you always see a SHA 256 key, so that you can verify if that file matches exactly the file that we wanted you to download. And you can define the depths of hash that you want to have there. We have a new CDK function to disable UTF-8 outline read save, which is required for some of the source control products that we do support. And this one is interesting. You can get and set the auto hide status of doc dialogs. So basically show and hide dialogs or doc dialogs using these new calls. Sal dialog get auto hide status and sal dialog auto set auto hide status. Then a new permutation of the XML serialize for strings. Before we had that for files, now we have it for strings as well. So sal XML serialize UDV to string puts the contents of a UDV into an XML string, and sal XML deserialize UDV from string puts the XML data from a string into a UDV array. One is a customer requested feature as well. The status of a navigation bar can be saved to receive parameters of this function here. Sal nav save state. So you have a number of variables that get filled with that information. And then you can use these variables to either save that information to the registry, to an XML file, to your whatever own initialization file. So you can do with that what you want. And we have the opposite again as well. Sal nav loads state X. So you can load all these variables from your application. So you can have the user, you can present the user with an exact layout that he has left the application with, for example. And it's in your control on how you save those data points. This one is an interesting one, sal net compile and evaluate. You can now call sal functions at .NET Runtime. So basically self-generated code can be used on the .NET side now. Now this is an interesting one. Customers have requested that one. You can now create a child window with menu enabled. This actually mimics a pre-5.2 bug. And you see that in the screenshot on the right here is where you have an application window which has a sub area, which actually is a window which has a menu bar. Not that, that matches Windows UI guidelines, but users or application developers wanted that. So we've, we've added that. The rich text control, you can now query if it has been edited, or you can set it edited. So you can find out if somebody has done edits to the field, and you can set it to be edited. And then the key up and key down for with win load accelerator can be defined by parameter flags. This seems to be an issue with Windows 10, where the keyboard accelerator has changed from key up or key down. I don't know exactly, but that can now be trapped with this new these new parameter flags. Then coming to notifications, Windows 10 has introduced quite nice notifications that TD developer wanted to leverage. We did introduce notifications with the previous release, I think 7.2 or 7.1. But it was limited because we had to compile Team Developer to support Windows 7. Since now we do not support Windows 7 anymore, we can actually offer more features for notifications. So we have provided a new API for you to use the Windows 10 toast notifications. So there's basically two calls. One is to initiate the toast message environment, which is sal notify init toast. And with that, you basically tell the system, this is the application, there's a toast ID, things that set the environment. And once that is done, then you can trigger a toast message, and you have that function here. Sal notify show toast. You have a picture, an array of messages, and these messages, I think, can be up to 3 messages that can be displayed, and an array of actions. And so 3 messages can be displayed there, and you have 5 actions, and these all include an action button. So you should have like short yes, no, cancel, call me, delay, things that you get a button for then, and you can then trap or react on SAM notified toast. With SAM notified toast, lparam is the one base index of action buttons. So if you have 5 buttons, you can say if lparam equals 1, then do this. If lparam equals 2, then do that. If lparam equals 3, then do this and that. And wparam is the toast notification ID. You know exactly what notification has been clicked, because you can, of course, trigger multiple notifications per application. So this is pretty powerful for the new toast notifications. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Helmut Reimann, our lead solution consultant, who will demonstrate the product for you.
I want to show you, first of all, a lot of filing features. I want to show you the anchoring. I want to show most of the new API functions inside one application. And later on, maybe we have time enough to look into mailing, to look into how to deal with Gmail and so on. First of all, you can see my small form, and I set up some properties for this form, new attributes, and you can see if you click on my form, you will see on the right-hand side in my attribute inspector, you will see that I have the anchoring enabled. For this form, it's also possible to say I want to have a vertical anchor and a horizontal anchor, because maybe this form is running inside an MDI window. So if the MDI window gets resized, then the form should also be resized. If you look into the minimum width and maximum width, I can limit my size of my form of my dialog to say, okay, what might make sense to be displayed? Doesn't make sense to say, I want to switch off the width and the height, the minimum width and the minimum height, because at least then everything is concentrated on one point. So the form or the dialog looks not very well. At least if you have a summary bar, you want to display the summary bar, not only the summary bar, you want to have also records inside your grid and so on. So it's like the dialog at design time in my eyes. Also, if we look into different controls like this grid, I click the grid, we have also anchoring. That means we have set the anchor, vertical anchor to both, and the horizontal anchor also to both. That means I can change the size of my grid in the length, and also I want to display more records. So I want to see more columns, I want to see more records. If we look into my data field hash value, then you will see I have the vertical anchor to bottom. Why? Pretty easy. So I need more space if I resize my dialog. If I want to show more, then I have to bind my controls above this grid to the bottom. And also maybe to the right-hand side or to the left. If I click it and I decide to go to anchoring both, then I can resize my control. I can show more information. So now one tip, it is not necessary to do resizing for every control, every text box, for example, because at least you can see in my hint text, I have for the password only maximum 10 characters in my database, or some information in the database. So it doesn't make sense to resize, to show more, because I get only a maximum 10 characters. So it doesn't make any sense to display more. So at this point, the anchoring is set to the vertical anchor is set to both, because I want to move it down if I want to show more records in my grid. And the left horizontal anchor is now set to left. That means it's bound to the left side of my screen. I can also look into this area. I mark all these controls on the right-hand side. And you can see my anchoring is now set to bottom. vertical anchor to bottom, and also the anchoring horizontal anchor is set to right. So it's bound to the right hand side of my screen. If I run my application, I changed something. So my application is running, and you can see I can go in this direction. I can show more information. And also what I can do, I can go into this direction. So I can show more records. I cannot shrink it to one point or to one line because my limit is set for this form window. So if we look into my password, type something in, I can use my hash function now to string hash to create a hash value. And you can see the length of the hash value is 64 bytes. That means I use a hash 256 encryption. And at this point, I can show all this information. At this point, it makes sense to resize the horizontal value of and length of this control. So it doesn't make sense for the password. So at least you need a red line inside your application. What should be bound and anchored to which direction, to which border of the form and the dialog. And also what you have to do is you have to find out what makes sense to be resized. Don't resize everything because, for example, in my eyes, it doesn't make sense to resize a button because a button has only an info, maybe an icon on it, and that's it. So it makes more sense to look into areas where you want to display more information and where to display some informations which are normally hidden. So this is done with the anchoring. Also, inside this application, I can show you the new profiling features. That means to create annotations, to look into the site profile tag, enter information, to write information into a profile, to find information is much better. And later on, I want to open a profile from an existing application. And you can imagine if you have a big application, everything is running into a profile, you get thousands of entries, thousands of lines of records inside your profile, and it makes it hard to read. Also, maybe you need some summaries. You need averages about function calls because not every function call needs the same time during runtime. We will see that later on inside my test application. But again, we can start looking into the profiling. So I start my application again, and you can see also I have an output in my debug environment. That means, for example, I use Sultry as debug to write out information during debug time from my application, like data selected, int debug, and some other information. So what I can do is now I can add, for example, annotation. Hello here. So this is now inside my profile, and I can look for this and I can search for this annotation inside my profile to find the right entry. I get maybe some profile information. Again, I can resize it to see more information. Where is my profile now? So everything is now inside the profile. I can do a reload of my screen. It's done by a function. So the function connects to the database, does all the database evaluation. That means a SQL statement and does a disconnect. Maybe I need the information. How long does it take to look into this environment? Also, maybe my application creates also tags. That means start the function, and at the end of the function, I close my tag. I do a tag end. So the system evaluates always a new tag ID. That means I have no contact or I have no responsible to create a new ID. So I can use a global variable like an tag number, and I can write out information for this tag, like start profiling. And I enter this tag. And now I can look into my profile information, my operating system information, and I can say end. Normally, you can use variables. You don't have to type something in because normally a user, if you switch on the profiling with a parameter list inside your links of your application, or if you want to use system variables, then you don't have to write something in. But at least only for demo reasons, I want to write something out. Also, maybe some information about the file name can be written out, and you will see inside my my list of my application, you will see I wrote out information about where is my profile. So this should be enough for now. I can close my application and stop profiling. And now I can open my profile viewer. This is a new viewer inside a Team Developer environment, and I can load my new profile. So this one is done now. I can open it, and you can see this is my main thread. I can see a lot of information inside my environment. I can see all this information about the runtime in milliseconds, by the way. And also what I can do is now I can search for special tags like annotations. And maybe I want to see also the tags. And here we go. So I close that one. And I get more information. That means, for example, I wrote out with get environment, I get some information about my runtime environment of my computer. So it's an array from the operating system, like the operating system, like the name of the machine, and also number of processors, and so on, so on. So maybe it makes sense if you want to track all this information on customer side, to write also this information into the profile. So with Salget environment, you get an array with all this information, and it makes sense to use annotate to write out these annotations for the different values. So you can compare different machines, different environments. And you can see we have tag numbers, tag stars, tag ends. And the new tab is something very useful. It's a summary. That means, for example, if you look into the Sal trace debug, it was called 4 times. Or if you look into Salget info, it was called 1 time, 254 milliseconds. Or if you connect to the database 2 times in my application, 366.5 milliseconds. So you get also information about all these summaries inside a running application. So it's not only one file, so we have also the summary. If we look into a more complex profile, let me open it, then you will see more useful things. I guess, not sure. Let's try that one. We have different threads. Like my application is using a thread to get emails from an email server. So I have a connect and so on. And you can see it takes some time to connect to the server. So the user should not be blocked during collecting all this information from the email server, getting the envelopes and maybe downloading all the attachments. Then it makes sense to pass this information into a thread. So I have a thread start, and I do something with my thread. So this is a special process number. And also I can open now my main thread. Also written information about my environment. I'll call salget environment, takes me 0.3 milliseconds. I get an upper bound because I don't know how many elements I get back in my environment. And I can also say and reading environment. So it's my tag inside. I get some timer information and maybe reactive, select something, and I can dig into my source code to find out what is going on. And also, for example, I disconnect. Disconnect takes me 0.4 milliseconds fetch takes sometimes 0.18 milliseconds, sometimes maybe a bit more, and so on. It depends what the operating system is doing, and so on and so on. And also, again, I can go into my summary. So I get values about all the calls, like style background worker report progress was called 7 times. Each time, or average was 4.143 milliseconds. And I have a total of my dispatcher from 29 milliseconds. So you get a lot of information in the running application. And again, it makes sense to use the new API like profile annotate to write out information into the profile during runtime, and also to maybe if you have long running functions and maybe also threads, then to have a profile tag start and a profile tag end. Let's go ahead with this application. I mentioned before the hash value. In this case, it is set to HA256, and I get informations about this hash value, and I can resize it to see all the values. So that means I can store this information instead of a password inside the database. And if someone logs in with this password, which is hidden, I can calculate with this string hash, the encrypted string, and I can compare the string with the value inside the database. So the application doesn't know where the password can be found. Database has no password inside, and so on. So this is very safe. And if you need more, then for example, you can use the hash 512. But at least we at OpenText, we use hash 256 for encryption. So no password needed inside the application. Let's have a look into the APIs. First of all, I can query now a rich text control if someone added some information. So it's empty, no one edited something, so I can type in and I can query it again and get back it's true now. So I can set it to false, so I ignore that something was in. And also I can query it again, and if I want to set it to true, then the edited flag is set to true. So that's pretty easy. Only to track if someone types something into a rich text control or reset the edit flag. To style XML serialize UDV to string means I can type in inside my instance variables like my name is Helmut and my age, for example. I can serialize it. And now I get all this information into an XML stream. I can change it. Maybe I want to retire. Let me see. I take Martin. And I send it back, and you can see also the typo from this XML stream is now analyzed and bring it back into the instance variable of an UDV. So that's also very useful if you want to serialize information, if you have complex data in UDV to serialize into a string, and maybe you want to store the string or you want to pass a string in a REST web service, or you want to pass it to another system, a third-party system, or you get back something and so on. You can analyze the document and you can write it back into the UDV. So nav sets X means the navigation bar inside can be used and can be triggered. That means, for example, I have now the pane number 1 selected, and I can change it. I can say I want to see number 1, and I can load it again, and then you can see it is changed. So I can use my application to say, okay, maybe the user changed all the settings, but at least the job is done, and I want to reset my navigation pane or my navigation bar. So at this point, I can first of all save this information, also the binary information, what was selected about, maybe the H items like the binary informations like icons and so on. I can save all this information. And later on, after the job, I can say, okay, reset my forms. And also I can reset my panes. Like I want to set it back to 0 and load the state, and then I get this information back. If you look into the API number 2, for doc dialogues, I can track now if a special dialog like that one is docked. So I get back, it's pinned, and it is visible. And I can now say I want to hide this dialog. And now it's gone. I want to bring it back. Here we go. And I can unpin my dialog. It's now unpinned. And I use this one and get back the information. So this is now possible to say, I want to dock a dialog, I want to undock a dialog, I want to hide a dialog, and so on inside an application. So this is done with SAL dialog set auto hide status. Let's have a look into another application. This application is very useful or is running in the .NET environment, so I can use SAL.NET compile and evaluate. Start it, for example, by application, and the SAL message box is done during runtime. So at least I have some information inside my application, and I can run and compile during runtime. So this code is generated at runtime. So it was done in Win32 years ago, and now you can use also SAL.NET compile and evaluate for .NET applications. I want to go back because I missed something. Let's go into maybe this function, and I want to have all my class. And you can see now overloaded function. That means I have several functions inside my functional class with the same name. So overloaded function with different signatures. That means with different parameter list. So I can use one like that one. I can get informations about the parameter list, all about the different strings and so on. So I inserted also some documentation inside the attributes of this functional class. If you look into that, you would see in my functions, like this function is a one parameter. I can get more information if I type in some more information and so on. Also for a parameter list, if I have numbers with naming words, or if I type in some commands, then I get more information inside my coding assistant, of course. So this is, for example, for overloaded functions inside the coding assistant. Of that one. Let's go into, start with my toast sample. We have now a sample. You can find the sample in the sample installation directory if you installed Team Developer 7.3. I can type in some information. Hello world. Normally it's also done inside the application, give some information. All me, I want to see all of them, and I want to see all these different buttons. And now I run the toast message. You can see here's my toast. Oops, it's gone. That was so quick. And I can say OK. And then you see the toast ID is 2, action OK. So I click the OK button. This is only available for Windows 10. Also, what you have to find out is you have to create a shortcut in your start menu, because then this application is running inside or is placed into the registry and registered. You need a special application name, and this name must also fit into the parameter list to initialize this post notification. But the sample shows a lot of things, how to set it up and how to use it. And in combination with some notify toast, you can track the result of the notification. Like I want to switch off, yes and no. I want to type in ignore, yeah, show toast, ignore. Here we go. Ignore was now pressed. So I get this information inside the source code. Please have a look into the samples, then I'm pretty sure you get it to work. Some or a last application I want to show and I want to share with you is my application. It's a more complex application with mails. At this point, I use Gmail as an email server for my test application. So I have now for Gmail a new option, set client secrets. So normally I have to set up my my Gmail account that other applications are allowed to send and receive emails. At this point, I can pass in the client secret and the client ID. For Gmail, for example, it works very well if you pass in client ID your email address. And for the client secret, you have to set up a special, let's say, two-phase connectivity. That means you have to open a port, a special port, and you get back a special token. So that means it's a 16 character token, and you have to pass this token into the email, into the secrets. And after that, then you can use the email client instead of Gmail accounts and so on inside your application. I pass this one into a special class because this class is running inside a thread. So this is done inside my MDI window. See, a lot of things are in. And I have a thread, background thread for the mails. And at least I start my thread. Before start, I pass in all this information. That means the SSL encryption. I want to set in all the server ports, the passwords, the client ID, and the client secret. I get this information from an INI file. And every time, maybe every 5 minutes, this thread starts, looks into the background thread and starts a background thread and looks into the background environment and gets back information. And also for sending emails, I did the same, but at this point it's not done with a thread. So this is pretty simple. It's a send function to send out emails, but again, sign client secrets. I pass in again the client ID and my token from Gmail, and that's it. Before I start running into that, I want to show you some more information inside the environment. You will find inside Gupta Team Developer 7.3 in auth.sample for this plugin. So this is a source code for the plugin. If you need a special plugin for a special email client, you can use this template, and you can, if I open it with this editor, you will see some information for different auth identifications. Also, if you look into the access token, so you can expand this code like for Gmail and for other Office 365 identifications and so on. You can compile this DLL, and also if you have everything inside the bin, you will find in release the DLL, and you can use this DLL inside your application by using the set plugin sal function, or the function of the object of OMail or SMTP. So if I run this application, you will see simple. My password is, of course, now hash encrypted, so you cannot find it inside the database. And I can send out emails. And of course, send emails, can type in an address and so on, sending it out with an attachment. Let's do it. Write something, cc down and on etc. Send emails and done. I can find this email also inside my database. You can see today gone. And if I send something back, then I will see in my status bar that my go. There's an email back, and you will see later on that maybe in a few minutes that you will see the background thread is running and I can work with my application. It writes and reads all these envelopes and get back this information, and the job is done. So this is from a real life application. So I'm nearly at the end, and I want to show at least, to be complete, the information about the row header click. So here we go. If you click on a special column header, then I get information, city column clicked, and so on. And of course, I can resize it. At this point, it doesn't make sense to have it into this direction, but at least you can see I can shrink it down. So it doesn't make sense. And in this case, I'm pretty sure that the min width and min height is not set. So it doesn't make any sense because I lose all my information. And that's it.
Thanks very much, Helmut, for these very nice product demonstrations. And with that, we are in the questions answer part. So put your questions into the questions tool of WebEx, please. I can only encourage you to try Team Developer 7.3, get your hands on responsive layout. It's really easy to use, and you will see that your users will love the applications where you can increase the size, increase the amount of information you can see. So the first question is sizing possible tool for the toolbar? You know, I haven't tried this. Helmut, did you try this?
No. To be honest, no. And I'm pretty, or if I use, for example, a ribbon bar, then of course the ribbon bar is resized. So the ribbon bar, of course, is resized, and but I'm not really sure about the toolbar. I never tested it, to be honest.
So, as I said before, I would strongly encourage you to download a trial version of Team Developer 7.3, or if you are on maintenance, download the full product from my support and start moving your applications to a responsive layout so that your users can take the maximum out of your applications and adapt them to very large screen sizes, for example, or very high resolutions.
Yes, it works also inside tabs. I tested it.
So yeah, the question is, does resizing work within tabs? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
And it also works for MDI windows, right, Helmut?
Yeah. So if you have, for example, a tab window inside an MDI window and also a ribbon bar and you resize the MDI window, everything gets resized. Like if you have a large button inside the ribbon bar and you move it, or if you shrink the MDI size, then you will get small buttons and so on. So it works very well.
Oh, there's one question. Is there a tool to change my font across the whole application to change it to true type font? My applications are from TD1, so we'll need this.
Yeah, there's a global area, and inside the globals you can find the font. So you can start looking into the globals, change the font, and also maybe if you have always derived from and no changes inside the dialogues and forms and so on, then you get this information from the globals. If not, you have to look into the dialogues. There's also a font setting inside the dialogue. So maybe you can start with a global, and then you have to search for maybe change fonts.
Carrie, it doesn't look like there are any more questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Martin. So at this time, we'll wrap up today's session, but please do take a minute to complete the post-event survey that will pop up as you exit the meeting, as we truly value your feedback. And just one final reminder that today's webinar was recorded, so within a short time, you'll be able to find the recording and the PowerPoint on my support page, and we'll also send an email out to all registrants with the materials attached. So thanks again to all our presenters for delivering the presentation today, and thanks to you all for joining us, and have a great afternoon.